Hi, second grade. Welcome to KCS at Home Summer Edition. My name is Miss Holmes, and I'm going to be working with you today to complete reading activity 2. Let's do a quick review before we begin. If this video is hard to understand in any way, there are a couple things that you can try. The first is to turn on the closed captions if they're available. You can also adjust the playback speed to slow down the video, or consider watching short clips, then pause, listen, and watch again. You can also ask someone in your home to watch the video with you and then stop frequently and talk to your partner about what you heard and understood. All right, let's go ahead and warm up our reading brains by looking at some sounds and words. Our first sound is created by a digraph. A digraph is when you have two letters that make one sound. Here we have PH, which make the f sound, as in phone. Practice with me. PH, phone. Good. Our next sound is created by another digraph that can be found at the end of some words. Here we have GH, which make the sound, as in laugh. Practice with me. GH, laugh. Good. All right, let's go ahead and decode some words. I know you guys are expert decoders. This is a great strategy to use as a reader when you come to an unknown word. As I look at our list, I don't see any prefixes or suffixes on these words. So let's go ahead and work to identify the vowels. Let's look for our digraphs. And then we'll go to the beginning of the word, saying each sound, and then we'll blend the word together. All right, let's go ahead and look at our first word. I see an O, and I know that O can make two sounds, O and ah, but I'm not sure what sound it makes here. Let's go ahead and keep looking. I also see a Y at the end of the word. I know when Y comes at the end of the word, it can make two vowel sounds, E and I. Here it makes an E sound, but if you weren't sure, you could try both. All right, so our word has two vowel sounds, so I know it's gonna have two syllables. I see that first syllable is open, and so I know that O is going to make a sound by saying its name. And there's our PH. Do you remember what sound it makes? Yep. All right, let's go to the beginning of the word. T, O, E, trophy. Good. Let's look at our second word. I see O, ah, I, Again, two vowel sounds, two syllables. These syllables are closed, so the vowel is surrounded by two consonants in the syllable. I know they're going to be short sounds here. And there's our PH. All right, let's go to the beginning. Let's do each syllable, and then we'll put the syllables together. D, ah, l, doll, fin, doll, fin, dolphin. Our next word has an O, which is in an open syllable, so it will say its name. And our E is paired with an R. That's called an R-controlled vowel. The R changes the sound of the E. So here, ER will make an sound. And there's our PH. G, O, gopher. Our next word has an O. And there's a silent E at the end. I know it's not going to say any sound, but it's going to make the O in the middle say its name. And there's our PH. O, phone. Let's look at our next column. Here I see a vowel team, AU, that's going to make an ah sound. And there's our GH. Do you remember what sound it makes? Yep. All right, let's go to the beginning of the word. Laugh. Our next word has an E in an open syllable, so it will say its name. And an OU vowel team, which here it's going to make an sound, like in the word touch. And there's our GH. Enough. OU, GH, OU, GH, rough. If you can pause the video, go ahead and do it here and whisper read the list. All right, let's use what we've learned in a reading passage. This passage has some words in it, just like the ones we just practiced. Let's go ahead and read together. Zach likes to sing funny songs. His pals pick songs that make him laugh. They phone him with laughter in their voices. They bring him stacks of songs with funny phrases. Mom asks, "Is this a phase? Zach has a nice voice. Pretty songs are not tough to sing. Are funny songs the only thing Zach will sing?" Zach says, "No, Mom, all kinds of songs bring me joy." Mom now has a photograph of Zach singing pretty songs. Again, if you can pause the video, go ahead and do that here and reread the passage. All right, let's talk about what we're going to do in reading today. Our essential question is, how can we be responsible when we make a mistake? This essential question is awesome because everybody makes mistakes. So when we get a chance to talk about this question and come up with some ideas, the ideas are going to be things that we can use in our own lives. So things that we can do to be responsible when we make mistakes. That's pretty cool. Our learning target is that we're going to read closely to explain how a character responds to a challenge. And let's look at our success criteria. These are the things you're going to need to do to be able to be successful with this activity. You're going to identify the characters, identify the challenge in the text, and then you'll explain how the character responds to the challenge. Include details about the main character's actions, thoughts, and feelings. All right, before we begin, I wanted to talk a little bit about this word, responsibility. I know in activity 1, you got a chance to talk with Ms. Clark about community members who are responsible, specifically firefighters. I wanted to go ahead and look at some texts that you've read this year that show some responsibility. Here's the first one, Henry and Mudge and the Starry Night. Do you remember it? It's from the beginning of the year. Your responsibilities are the duties that you have because of your job or position. In this text, Henry's job was to take care of Mudge, and he did a great job. He was a responsible pet owner. What about this text, Rosa and Blanca? It's one of my favorites. If you have responsibility for something or someone, it is your job or duty to take care of them and to make decisions relating to them. Do you remember in this story, the sisters felt like they had a responsibility to take care of each other. So they were bringing each other vegetables, but they didn't know it. So when they went back to their own house and they saw all the vegetables, they were confused and didn't know where they came from. That was pretty cool. They had a responsibility to take care of each other. What about this text, Pearl and Wagner, two good friends? Another good one. If you accept responsibility for something that has happened, you agree that you were to blame for it or you caused it. In this text, do you remember when the robot broke down at the science fair and then Wagner snuck into the back and used his robot voice to fool the judges? He realized he had made a mistake, and by the end of the text, he sits down and talks to Pearl and tells her that he was just trying to help out. So he took responsibility for his mistake. I also want to talk about this word. Here's our word responsible, but it's got a prefix at the beginning. Now, I know that IR has a meaning of not, and when I know the meaning of the prefix, I can figure out the meaning of the word. So here, the word irresponsible means not responsible. If someone is being irresponsible, they are doing things without thinking about the possible consequences. Uh-oh. All right, here's the title of our text, The Sign-Maker's Assistant. Now, I wanted to go ahead and quickly just talk to you about possessive nouns because our title has a possessive noun in it. A possessive noun is a noun that owns or has something. So here, the sign maker has an assistant, and we show that with an apostrophe S. So a possessive noun is formed by adding an apostrophe S to the noun, but if the noun is plural and already ends in S, only an apostrophe needs to be added. So since the sign maker has an assistant, we add an apostrophe S to show that ownership. That's a possessive noun. All right, here's our title page, The Sign Maker's Assistant. The genre is humorous fiction. So this is a funny story about imaginary people and events. So look for funny things that happen in the story as we read. All right, let me go ahead and remind you about our purpose for reading. Remember that today we're going to read closely for details about the main character's actions, thoughts, and feelings. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read the text, and you go ahead and read with me. Everyone in town agreed. The old sign maker did the finest work for miles around. Under his brush, ordinary letters became beautiful words. Words of wisdom, words of warning, or words that simply said which door to use. When he painted stop, people stopped because the sign looked so important. When he painted please keep off the grass, they kept off because the sign was polite and sensible. All right, let's go ahead and stop right there. So we meet our first character in the text. And who is it? Yeah, the sign maker. There he is in the illustration. I like that he works in his socks. All right, so what do we learn about the sign maker at the beginning of our story? Yeah, I noticed this phrase right here, that he creates the finest work for miles around. And when I look at the word finest, I see that it has a suffix on it, est. And I know that est means most. So the word finest means the most fine, or the best. So he creates the best work for miles around. And when people read his sign, they do what the sign says. That's important to remember. All right, let's continue reading. When he painted good food, they just naturally became hungry. People thanked the sign maker and paid him well, but the kind old man never failed to say, I couldn't have done it without Norman's help. Okay, what else do we learn about the sign maker? Yeah, people thank him and pay him well. Let's think of an adjective to describe the sign maker. Oh, I see one in the text. Did you see it too? The author uses the word kind to describe the sign maker. But let's come up with something different. Let's think about what we've learned about the sign maker so far in our text. So he does the finest work, and when he paints a sign, people read it and do what the sign says. And people thank him and pay him well. What about the word respected? I really think the people in that community respect the sign maker and the work that he does. All right, so we meet Norman, the sign maker's assistant, our main character. Remember, the story is named after him. The title says the sign maker's assistant, and here he is, Norman. And we learn a little bit about Norman and the relationship that he has with the sign maker. Do you see anything in the text that gives us some hints about the relationship? Yeah, right here. So the sign maker says, when people talk to him about his signs, I couldn't have done it without Norman's help. So the sign maker gives credit to Norman when he talks to people about his work. That tells me, when I use my inferencing skills, that the sign maker is thankful for Norman and his help. And he lets people know about it. All right, let's continue reading. Norman was the sign maker's assistant. Each day after school, he cut wood, mixed colors, and painted simple signs. Soon I will have a shop of my own, said Norman. Perhaps, answered the sign maker, but not before you clean these brushes. One day after his work was done, Norman stood at a window over the sign shop and watched people. They stopped at the stop sign. They entered at the enter sign. They ate under the good food sign. Okay, so we learn a little bit about Norman on this page. What did you learn? Well, I noticed that he does a lot at the sign maker shop. He cuts wood, he mixes colors, and he paints simple signs. Did you notice anything else? Yeah, that seems like a lot of work. And he does it after school. So he goes to school during the day and then goes to the shop and helps the sign maker. Why do you think he does all those things? That seems like a lot of work. What does the text say about that? Well, right here he says, soon I will have a shop of my own. So that sounds like a dream of Norman's. That's probably why he's working so hard at the shop. And he does it after school. That's a big deal. Let's go ahead and come up with an adjective to describe Norman. All right, so he goes to school, then he comes to the shop and does all these different jobs for the sign maker. What about hardworking? I think that's a good adjective to describe him. All right, let's keep reading. They do whatever the signs say, said Norman to himself. I wonder. He crept into the shop while the sign maker napped. With brush and board, he painted a sign of his own. Early the next morning, he put up the sign and then ran back to his window to watch. Wait a minute. Stop right there. Stop right there. Wait a minute. Okay, we just described Norman as hardworking and talked about how much he does at the sign shop and the relationship between the sign maker and Norman. And so our character, it seems, has gone through a change in our story. Remember, characters do that. That's what makes stories interesting. And they can go through a couple of changes. So let's go ahead and talk about the change we see in Norman. What were you guys thinking about when we read that? When I saw this right here, I wonder, it made me in my head go, uh-oh, he might be up to something, because he realizes that people do what the signs say. And then I saw this verb here, crept. That told me that he's being very sneaky creeping in. Did you notice anything else sneaky? Yeah. He's doing this all while the sign maker naps. Oh my goodness. That tells me he's being really sneaky. It sounds like he's up to something not too good. And he goes into the shop and paints a sign of his own. I don't think he would have done that if the sign maker wasn't asleep. And then what does he do? Yeah, he puts up his sign and then he runs back to the window to watch. Why do you think he does that? Yeah, he wants to see the effect of his sign. He wants to know what's going to happen when people read it. Oh my goodness. All right, let's keep reading. No school? Muttered the principal. How could I forget such a thing? No one informed me, said the teacher. Hooray! Cheered the children, and everyone went home. All right, what's the effect of Norman's sign? Yeah, people read the sign, assume there's no school, and go home. Oh my goodness. All right, let's go ahead and add these to our note taker. You can see here we have 3 columns because we're talking about Norman's actions, thoughts, and feelings. Now, he crept into the shop. Let's go ahead and put that in the action column. And I also put in there that the sign maker was asleep. Remember, that's a big deal because I don't think Norman would have done all those things if the sign maker had been awake. And he goes to the window to watch. He wants to see the effect of his sign. All right, let's keep reading. This is great, cried Norman. He looked around town for another idea. Oh, he said at last, there is something I have always wanted to do. The following day, Norman jumped from the top of the fountain in the park. As he swam, he thought to himself, I can do lots of things with signs. Ideas filled his head. That afternoon, when Norman went to work, the sign maker said, I must drive to the next town and paint a large sign on a storefront. I'll return tomorrow evening, so please lock up the shop tonight. Oh my goodness gracious. All right, so let's talk about it. So Did Norman think he made a mistake with the no school today sign? No, look at this. On the next page, he says, this is great. So what is he thinking? Yeah, everything's awesome. Oh my gosh. And he's thinking, he's looking around town for another idea. And what does he come up with? Yeah, look at the illustration. He made a sign that says open for swimming. So what does he always wanted to do? Yeah, swim in the town fountain. Ugh. Do you see anything else that he's thinking about? Yeah, I can see here that these words look different from the words around them. They're in italics. Remember, when words look different from the words around them, pay attention to them. There's something special about them. Do you know why these words are italicized? It's because he's thinking them. And what does he think? Yeah, I can do lots of things with signs. And ideas fill his head. What does that mean? Yeah, he's getting lots of ideas. He's looking around the town and thinking of different signs he can make. It almost seems like Norman is just thinking about himself, doesn't it? Not about the townspeople. That seems a little selfish. All right, let's go and add these things to our note taker. So he looks around for another idea and he thinks, I can do lots of things with signs. And ideas filled his head. And he did have a feeling. How's he feeling about this whole thing? Yeah, remember he said, this is great. So he thinks everything's awesome. All right, let's go ahead and read our last page for today. As soon as the sign maker was gone, Norman started making signs. He painted for hours and hours and hours. In the morning, people discovered new signs all around town. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I noticed this phrase as I read it, as soon as. That tells me that he does something right away. And what does he do right away? Yeah, the sign maker walks out the door of the shop and he starts painting right away. And what does he do during that time that the sign maker's gone and he's in charge of the shop? Yeah, he paints for hours and hours and hours. Now, I can use my inferencing skills again, and I know if he's painting for hours and hours and hours, that's a long time. So I'm thinking that Norman has painted a lot of signs to put up around the town. I'm not sure this is going to be too good. Take a moment to look at the illustrations at the bottom of the page. You can see some of Norman's signs. Oh my goodness. All right, let's add those things to our note taker. We have that he starts working as soon as the sign maker leaves. Ugh. And he worked for hours and hours and hours. All right, here's your writing task. How did Norman respond to the challenge of taking care of the sign maker's shop? Here's our note taker with all of our notes that we pulled from our text. Your prompts up at the top. I wanted to go ahead and add this word too to our note taker, the word irresponsible. You might be able to use it in your writing. If you can pause the video, go ahead and do that here and use our notes to help you write. All right, let's review what we did today. We read closely to explain how a character responds to a challenge. We identified the characters in the text and the challenge in the text. Now, I want you to explain how the character responds to the challenge. Don't forget to include details about the main character's actions, thoughts, and feelings. I also have a cool extension activity for you to do. It's narrative writing. I want you to go ahead and finish this story. Make sure to include how Norman takes responsibility for his mistake. So let's go ahead and take a quick minute and look at the very last page. Remember that when you finish a story for an author, it's kind of like they're putting down the pencil and you're picking up the pencil to finish their story. Let's go ahead and read these last two paragraphs. As soon as the sign maker was gone, Norman started making signs. He painted for hours and hours and hours. In the morning, people discovered new signs all around town. Don't forget to look at these illustrations at the bottom. I see one of Norman's signs on the bank here. Do you see it? It says closed. And then look at the sign on the trash can that he made. Deposit money here. Don't forget, people did just what the sign maker's signs said. And that's what Norman noticed. Our second sign that he created says, eat your hat. And I see some hats with some bite marks in them. Oh my goodness. And he made a sign for the toy shop. What does it say? Yeah, buy Norman a present. Oh my goodness. All right, good luck with your writing. Again, my name is Ms. Holmes. Thank you for joining me for the activity today. Don't forget to join me for activity 3, where we finish this text, The Sign Maker's Assistant. Thanks so much.